nice thing about the 303, the road from London to Glastonbury is the A303, and it's very meandering.
It was like a rebel within itself, do you know what I mean? It wasn't conventional bandy music. It was like, what the hell is this sound?
The 303 was, it had great weird, and it was like the sort of, the instrument sort of would take over, basically.
I went to see Black Dog Productions, and the finale was the 303 to the front of the stage, and three of them leaning over each other like they were playing Twister, so they could each operate a knob on this thing. And because it was, you know, three pairs of hands instead of one, it actually did take the 303 into a different dimension.
2 303s.
In 1982, Roland produced a machine that attempted to emulate the sound of a real drummer and bass player. It was called the TB-303.
The Roland TB-303 bass line was designed to play the bass line. It was because, you know, drum machines get rid of drummers, bass line get rid of bass line players. So all you do is use programming a little pattern into it, and it gives you this kind of relatively fat, you know, moderately bass guitar sounding thing if you use it properly.
But what was, when it was originally designed, it was meant for you know, solo singer-songwriters to have some sort of approximation of a band playing behind them. Yeah. So you can imagine some guy standing at Baker Street station playing Streets of London with his little 303 burling down beneath him.
Yeah.
And they only made them between 1982 and 1984. Yeah. And they were phenomenally unpopular. Because they were crap.
They were rubbish for the purpose for which they were designed.
Exactly.
However, the purpose for which they were not designed was turning into acid house.
By accidentally turning a knob on the 303, a seed was born.
The 303 is so difficult to program, and the manual translated from the Japanese is so particularly opaque that you're reduced to randomly pressing stuff and seeing what happens. And basically, out of that came acid house music. Out of this machine, Marshall Jefferson and his crew were wigging out and seeing what sounds they could get out of it. And it's like, hey man, this shit's got a mood, let's put this out. And that was Acid Tracks by Future.
The whole trend comes from DJ Pierre Spanky going into the studio with this box they discovered and just making records for DJ Ron Hardy to play at the Music Box in Chicago. Now he's a lot more of an insane DJ than Frankie Knuckles. He was on drugs a lot of the time. He played all his records speeded up. It was just very fucked up sort of music.
303 is like an auto bass accompaniment, like a low budget bass line accompaniment for, you know, for musicians. I guess that's what it was invented for, and then didn't really do very well until around 1988-87 when Future did Acid Tracks.
They just fiddling with this machine until they got the sound, which apparently originally was 130 BPM, which was and they slowed and Marshall Jefferson persuaded them to slow it down to the slight speed it is now. They came out with this track, Acid Tracks. They only called it Acid Tracks because it wanted to sound what sounded like acid rock. There's no other sort of connotations at all. And they just gave it to, they just played it on cassette, and people got going mad for it.
It spawned a whole style of music based around this thing, and essentially, a lot of the time, based around this thing going wrong. You know, sort of sounding what, you know, making the sort of sound that it would make when you leave it in a cupboard and drag it out after years, and it sort of tends to have its own little patterns left in it, which nobody wrote, and that's what, you know, that's often the sound of acid house. Not all of it, you know, some of it's far more structured than that, but some of the better sort of rolling, you know, 3-time over 4-time sort of stuff is just sort of random, which is something, you know, I've been defending myself against for years with electronic music, that machines don't write music. They don't write the music, you have to do it yourself. But in this case, the 303 does write acid house on its own.
The 303 was transformed overnight from a wimpy beatbox for talentless buskers to the hottest gear in town. And because Roland had taken the stupid thing off the market, people like Orbital were reduced to buying them off strange men.
We bought one and they had a pub band. I bought it off a pub band guy. And he had, what did he have? West End girls, and West End boys, and it was dong, dong, dong. It was like that. It was like, no, this is
painful.
This is not how you're supposed to use it. You're supposed to use it in a ragga sort of style.
No, that's exactly how it was supposed to be used.
That's
why it failed in 1984.
Speaking personally, you know, when I first heard acid records, I was at university, and you heard about acid house. I mean, I didn't know how you made it. I didn't know how where the sound came from. But you started hearing records like Armando, Land of Confusion, like Mr. Fingers, Acid Attack, like acid tracks, Mike Dunn, Magic Feet, and you're hearing these records, and you're like, wow. To me, it was epiphanal. It was like some of the most funky music I'd ever heard in my life. I mean, I hadn't discovered acid house, I hadn't discovered ecstasy. I just listened to these records going, oh my God, this is amazing. It was just such a driving, incredibly sort of individual sound.
The great thing about it is that
must have had a huge effect right across the board when people started hearing this.
The good thing about it was the first time you hear it, you realise that this is the first time in a very, very long time you've heard something you've never ever heard before. Music being made in a completely different way through technology that has never particularly existed before. 303 wasn't sophisticated technology; it was just the way it was put together.
It's obsolete technology. Yeah, that's what's so good about it.
I've only ever heard it being used for its intended purpose of playing a bass line once, which is on good old Heaven 17 on Let Me Go, where it plays a bass line, and I think that's the only time it's ever been used for that purpose on a record. Everywhere else, it is the sound of acid. It is the squirrely noise.
In the 90s, the 303 fell out of fashion.
There was a kind of fallow period for the 303.
Fashion, totally,
yeah, but when it came back into fashion, it really came back into fashion. And, hence Fatboy Slim, everybody loves the 303. Which is kind of true, isn't it? Because it has that kind of Pavlovian response. Once you've heard it, you only need to hear a little bit of acid burble, and it really gets you going.
And now actually, I just heard like the Aaliyah record, and a lot of the hip-hop guys, the R&B hip-hop guys now are actually using 303s like on slow beats and using some of the sounds, and it sounds really fresh. So I think it's one that sort of aged well. I mean, it has its ups and downs, and about 5 years ago it was like incredibly popular, and Norman Cook would use it and everyone used it, and now it's one of those things that will always work, that there's always a spot for it in a record. It just adds that sort of funny, weird vibe to a record.
We still use these machines to an extent, but it's true to say that hardware musical machines are under a lot of threat from software and digital technology. And what that means is that a machine like this and a machine like the 303, which if you wanted to go and buy this now, it's going to cost you £1,000 because people want them because they make acid house and you can make a record with it. So what you do is you get a bit of software which sits in your computer and gives you the same functions as this, makes the same sounds, and you can buy for about £100.
We've been around a long time, and playing live and stuff like that from about 11 years ago, and we did used to get interviewed, and people were very technophobic about that, and going, oh, well, the computer, somebody wrote, which sort of sums it up really, oh yeah, our LP sounds like we've turned the computer on, went off and had a cup of tea and then let the computer do its stuff. Which is obviously people are a lot more clued up to it now, and obviously that they know that that's not true. But in that case, it could be quite true. A bit of neglect doesn't do it any harm at all.
Yeah,
like the corking tune.
It's a bit like good wine. You leave it in the cupboard for a few years, and it comes up a really good acid house.
Anyone can make an acid record with a 303, and can now do it for the price of a pair of Nike trainers. This means the professionals have to go one better.
One particular track, which we used the 303 in, still, after all these years, we
did something that I've always wanted to do, and in 5.1, and that's, like with the modulating synth, as we've been talking about, is put the 303 4 times, one in that speaker, one in that speaker, one there, and delay them all by 4 bars each or something like that, so that as this one rises up, that one comes behind it, then that one, which is quite, really weird sort of
like
circular.
A round, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a 303 round, just like a medieval round.
Yeah.
One take on electronic techno music is that it's a conversation between man and the technology that we've created. I think music's always been about man's attempts to kind of interface with the environment. A lot of music is actually about natural sounds. Birds are imitating car alarms nowadays, which is also a clue on what's going on. But nowadays, it's techno time. Techno sounds in the environment all around you. You can't get away from it. Some people don't really get that, but go and listen to your fridge. Your fridge makes sounds. Go and do it now and understand what that means. A conversation between man and machine is techno. Techno in the pure, true, deep sense. And these machines encapsulate that.